Hey beer babes, just Will here, just jumping on to let you know in this episode we talked to Joe from Man Child Brewing, and it's actually a really interesting chat, sort of hearing about someone who's got sort of a different idea about how their brewery is going to operate and deliver their beer. It's an awesome chat. Unfortunately, we actually recorded this at Tandy's Craft Beer Bar in Launceston. Shout out to them for letting us have a chat. It was great, but it was packed, which is good for them, and it's a little bit loud. I've tidied the audio as best as I can, but you're definitely going to hear a fair bit of ruckus in the background. But you can still make out the chat, and it's worth a listen. So I'm going to put it out anyway. So hope you enjoy it.
Hey beer babes, I'm here at Tandy's Craft Beer Bar, and my goodness, it is a beautiful night, and I am joined by Joe from Man-Child Brewing. I didn't even check, is it Man-Child Brewing beer or just Man-Child?
Man-Child Brewing, yeah.
Yes.
Man-Child Brewing.
Cool.
Based out of St Helens here in Tasmania.
Awesome. So, Joe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Man-Child Brewing?
Like years and years of making really shitty homebrew from kit and kilo style kits, and then I was really lucky that a close mate of mine was the head brewer for Bogues, who sort of took me by the hand and said, no, this is how you do it properly. He's moved on now and he's working in Queensland, but for probably about a decade ago, probably about 6 or 8 months, I worked with him most weekends making different beers and brewing beers, which really sparked passion for brewing all grain and brewing from scratch. So that sort of then happened over a decade, and I got my recipes right, I got my my head in the game a little bit, and then I decided at the very beginning of last year, about January, I thought, we've got lots of, where I live here at St Helens, we've got lots of events that happen, or lots of little small gatherings that happen. I thought I could brew beer and serve these guys and just keep a really small craft brewery based out of St Helens, based on events and gatherings, plenty of tourists coming through, and then literally as I started the process, we went straight into COVID. So there's been a little bit of a pause. We took about 12 months, then righto, what the fuck do we do with this? And we changed what we were doing a little bit. We brought it back around to doing less events and more of a wholesale to venues approach. We're still very much poised and ready for it when we're able to do that side of things again, but now we're more looking to brewing bigger batches of beer rather than small batches in the short term, in conjunction with some other breweries, and then putting it out into venues like Tandy's, where we are today.
Yeah. So talking about events and stuff, you've uniquely set up to cater to like festivals and stuff like that. Can you tell us a bit about your beer rig?
Yeah. So we got actually, it fell into my lap that we got a trailer, an enclosed trailer that was perfectly set up to put my beer system into. So I fitted it out with 6 taps. It's able to hold 15, maybe 20 kegs of beer and keep them cold that I can serve over whatever period that we need. So we're talking small kegs, not 50 litres, talking 20 litre kegs that I use for that.
That's still a lot of beer.
That's plenty, yeah, that'll keep it going for a day or so.
Yeah, it's more than an esky.
Yeah, that's it. So we're set up to sort of roll that up to whatever venue you want, be it private parties, be it small events, be it big events. We could do something like a festival in the park or Festivalia and those sorts of things on the scale that we're at there. It'll serve both from the small stuff that I brew in the home brewery, or even hook up to the 50 litre kegs if I want to serve the bigger Sankey kegs that I brew when I'm doing my gypsy brewing. So yeah, it works well for both.
All right. So with now that you've moved into more commercial brewing, so like brewing to give to venues and stuff like that. You said you're doing gypsy brewing. How big is your setup?
So what I can brew at home is about 100 litres per batch, which works really well for being agile and doing different brews. So say you've got a party coming up, I can throw beer ready for you within 2 weeks and it'll be ready to go. which is really handy for that and for the business model that I originally sort of anticipated. It was nice and quick and simple. 100 litres of beer will do most small venues, and a few weeks' notice will give me 300 to 400 litres of beer that I can have ready to go. So that worked really well. So far, what we've done is partner with another couple of larger brewers here in Tasmania who will allow me to use their equipment when they're not brewing their own beers, and that allows me to then step up to 1,000 litre brew sizes to cater to this side of things.
And that's really cool. And I think like the more breweries I've spoken to, a lot of the time, particularly when they're starting out, there is a lot of like that gypsy brewing you were talking about, and it's so amazing to hear like about the craft beer community. Like no one really seems to be like, no one's ever pissed off that there's someone new. It's a very like welcoming and open sort of community.
It's been incredible. Yeah, it's just starting out. As I said, I had friends that are brewers, and I've done some brewing with a number of different craft brewers here in Tasmania. But what I can say is that some of the bigger players in craft brewing here in Tasmania, if you think about the two here in the north, maybe Stu and Paul from Ocho and Morrison, both of which have been amazing sort of. I've sent Stu a couple of messages saying, hey, how do you do this? Or hey, is this? And straight away, bang, back, there's a message, this is how I do it. No hesitance. He's sent me pictures of how he's actually done things before. Like, it's just a really nice, open sort of community.
Yeah.
And no, as you say, no aggro, no grumpiness about competition. I think there is a big enough share of the market for expansion here still.
And I think it's like I'm a strong believer of a rising tide lifts all ships.
100%.
And I think that's really how I see craft beer in Tassie. I think that like everyone adds something special and unique, and that's lifting the whole community all at once.
And if you look at the successful craft breweries around Tasmania, they've all got a niche that they've carved for themselves, be it like Bruni Island doing their sort of farmhouse funky stuff, be it 2 Metre Tall doing the whacked out crazy
Wild
stuff that they do. Van Diemen are now sort of carving their own little niche into that sort of estate ales where they do everything themselves. I think it's everyone sort of has their place, and then no one's really stepping on anyone's toes greatly in what they're trying to achieve anyway. So
yeah. So speaking of everyone having their niche, on your website you say that you want your beers and your brewery to be seasonal, sustainable, and sexy. Can you explain that for me?
So seasonal beers is something that I've always felt fairly passionate about if I'm going to do it commercially, because I don't want to. The idea with my brew was never to do a core range of beers. I don't want to be the guy who brews a Pilsner and a Pale Ale and an IPA and then a Stout, and that's all he ever does, and every week he sits down and he brews those same 4 beers again. I always wanted the beers to sort of be constantly evolving, and as I learn, because I'm constantly learning, and I think you always should be, but as I learn as I go, I might want to change the recipe, so I don't want to release the same beer that I did last time if it was shit, or if it was okay but could be improved. So the seasonal idea partially comes from that philosophy, and partially comes from the fact that seasonal availability of ingredients where I am can be really funky and really interesting. Oyster Stout, being from St Helens, we can do an oyster stout, and we can do it with fresh oysters that have come out of the bay the day before, for example. So there's a whole bunch of funky things that I've got up my sleeve that I'm not necessarily going to talk about now, but that feed into that seasonal side of things. I think sustainability is something that should be at the forefront of everyone's mind. I don't think that whether that's finding creative ways to reduce my water usage, finding creative ways to cut down on the amount of petrol used in transport, and all those sort of things, like just little things that we can do. And I think brewing small and brewing in a really agile and considerate manner allows me to do that. And I think the sexy is the one I'm going to struggle with. It is what it is. We can only work with what we've been given, can't we?
Exactly.
Maybe the beers can be sexy.
Yeah. Now we're talking. With your you like you're talking about your oysters and stuff for your stouts. Do you try to use like St Helens stuff in your beers?
So like, I've got a small patch of hops that I grow locally at home each year, and I do one brew that is a fresh hop brew that sort of feeds into that. Certainly an oyster stout is going to be a really big part of what we do, because we can work in conjunction with a couple of the seafood. The guys who've got oyster leases down at home are mates of mine, and we can work together to make that. And I love oyster stout. I don't know if you've had one, but they're a superb beer.
I've never been brave enough, but
They're incredible.
I think I will.
Yeah, and working. So a big part of what we do is working in conjunction with a local Japanese fusion restaurant, who we have taken us on as a house ale. But that'll be 4 beers over there, so they'll be all seasonal brews that will be done with ingredients to complement their menu as well. So we'll try and be as fresh and as local and as interesting as we can with that. If we include fruit, it'll all be locally grown fruit. If we do any of those sorts of things, like in the past, not since I've been brewing commercially, but in the past I've done forage ales where I've used roadside blackberries and things like that to keep things spicy. So yeah, look, we'll see what comes of it, I guess.
And I suppose that idea really works with the sort of smaller batch, deliberate style it sounds like you're going for.
Yeah.
You can decide, you know what, this week we're going to make something a bit different, a bit wacky from what I've got, and see what happens, and then we'll sell that. Like I think that's a really interesting way to go about it. I think that is awesomely unique, like you said. That's going to be your carved out.
I hope so, yeah. And like being able to do quick pilot brews where we can brew up, say, a 50-litre half batch at home, taste it, go, "Ugh, that's horrible," and pour it down the drain, or go, "Oh, that's amazing, we need to step that up."
Yeah.
Allows me to continue what you just said, like it just grow that idea of like, fast, interesting, ever-changing sort of beer landscape.
So, before I move on, I mean, will you have a core range of beers, or is it going to be every day? Every time I go to get a man trail beer, it's going to be something different.
I don't want to say either way. To be honest, I think in the short term, I don't think that you'll taste the same beer twice. Only because I think you'll see a core range of styles. Okay. So like I think everyone brews what they want to drink, and I'm a pretty eclectic drinker, but I do have a handful of styles that I absolutely love. So there's probably always going to be a hoppy ale of some description, be it an IPA or a hopped up APA of some description. I'm a big fan of sour beers, so a fruited sour is likely to be in there. The beer that we're launching tonight here at Tandy's is a rye beer. It's an IPA again though. I've got a bit of a passion for Tasmanian hops, so there'll always be big hoppy beers based around Enigma and Galaxy, some of those other typically Hop Products Australia hops. But yeah, whether or not you'll have the same beer twice is probably unlikely. I think it's more likely that you'll have very similar beers that have just evolved to improve each time we brew them, and we'll give them a different name because why the hell not?
Yeah, why not mix it up?
Yeah.
Do you think so? I'm mostly asking questions for myself. Do you see this becoming something you can pick up a 4-pack at the bottle shop, or do you feel are you going to keep kegging and setting the venues?
So the next brew, I think we'll put some beer into cans. Whether that's a big release or maybe 50, 60 cartons or something like that, and we just sort of give it out to all the guys that we love around the state. I'm not sure, but I actually haven't even fully decided on what the next brew will be. I've got pressure from a whole bunch of different people to do various different beers for their venues, and I'm just trying to find the happy medium for that, and I want to find something that'll be commercially successful in a can, so I'm thinking it'll probably, in a slightly boring way, be a pale ale of some description. This is not really 100% what I want to do, but it makes sense to brew things themselves as well. I think so. There's a likelihood of cans, whether there's a consistent supply of cans. I wouldn't say that's likely. It'll come and go.
So what you're saying is if you see a can, you need to buy it.
Yeah,
You have to buy it straight away.
Yeah, if you get a chance to grab hold of it, grab hold of one for sure.
Exactly.
And the cool thing is too, they won't be like my big philosophy always is never be boring. So it's not going to be even if it is a pale ale of some description, it's not going to be something that tastes like what other people have brewed. It'll have a bit of funk going on there somehow.
From talking to you, it sounds like when somebody drinks something from Manchild, they're going to know it's from Manchild.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I hope to carve out that my own niche in the market and do my own style of beers for sure. So I don't anticipate brewing something that is necessarily something that everyone on the BJCP Beer Guidelines is going to go, oh, that's definitely this. I think it'll be whatever I can concoct in the small brew and come up with.
Yeah, well, that sounds awesome, man. That's I'm currently on a real hazy tear. So if you want to throw a couple of hazes in the cans, I'll pick those up.
It's funny. I'm very unlikely to brew a hazy. I love hazies. I'm drinking the Snoop D hazy from Shambles here as we speak. And I will. I'll buy a hazy. Quite frequently I'm out at venues, but it's pretty unlikely that I'll brew a classic hazy IPA, like a New England style IPA.
Why is that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I think the market's saturated with them.
Yes.
Absolutely saturated. Everyone is literally doing one at the minute.
Bolter's got like 5 themselves.
And like places like what are the guys down south that have just opened up the big brew pub in town? Fox Friday. Like
Fox.
Those guys have done literally squillions of really banger hazies. There's a heap around the state at the moment, and there's a heap all around the world. And I don't necessarily think that I need to weigh into that conversation. I'm pretty happy to let other people take that narrative and take it for a run. Actually, I'm a massive fan of West Coast pale ales and the more dank, big, hoppy IPAs of, you say yesteryear, but it's only a couple of years ago before the hazies came and took over.
The good old days.
Yeah, that's it. And I think in talking to people, talking to beer drinkers, people still enjoy that style, and it's still got a following. It's really friggin' hard to find one. Like the last time I had a decent West Coast pale ale on tap somewhere was a real surprise to even see one. So I think it's probably more likely to be that style of not necessarily massive, big, dank, kick in the teeth style IPAs, but something more along those lines. Just because I don't think I need to chase that market. I'm pretty happy to let others cover that.
I feel like that's a very measured and mature approach. Whereas I just only make whatever's hot right now, which is probably why I should own a brewery.
But it's so easy to think that way, though. And I think it's easy to fall into that trap because for me it's not my only gig. Like I'm a high school maths science teacher, so but by day I corrupt young people's minds, and by evening I make beer. And I think if I was brewing beer to put food on the table, you'd see American pale ale, Pilsner, a stout, hazy IPA. They'd all be in cans. They'd be mass produced, and you'd only ever buy those beers. But this has never been the brewing journey for me has never been about money to an extent. It's being about being able to justify buying heaps of sick toys for myself and say to my wife, no, it's okay, this is for the business. And then also just, I like to have a passion, and I always like to sort of, I tend to find things down to the nth degree, and that's what I've been doing with this. So like an ability to sort of play with that and do so where I can get some return for it made sense. But no, I don't think there's a hazy on the horizon as a very long answer to a short question.
Well, that's all right. I'm sure I'll find something else that you make that I like. But
hopefully, in a minute, when Byron finally puts the IPA on tap, you'll be able to try the rye, and hopefully you like that.
I'm very excited for it. Before I let you go, Joe, my last question, this is how we end all our interviews, is I want to know, what's your favourite beer? Now, I know this is a hard question, but just do your best. What's your favourite?
To name one favourite would be pretty tricky, to say the least. I think The best beer that I've had recently was probably the easiest way to answer that. The absolute standout beer that I've had in the last few months was a Firestone Walker Parabola. It's their 2020 release. It came. I was lucky enough to find it on tap at the Winston just recently. I was down there, one of my favourite pubs down south, and yeah, that beer blew my mind. It was 13%, I think, barrel aged, just kicking the teeth with flavour. Phenomenal Russian Imperial Stout. I had a 7 ounce pony of it, and afterwards I couldn't have drunk any more. It was like a meal in a glass, but it was phenomenal. Like, just seriously one of the coolest beers that I've had this year. And I think big shout out to the guys down there at the Winston for bringing beers like that to the Tassie market, because you can always rely on walking in there to try something that you've never had before.
Well, while people are looking for something they've never had, I think that Man-Child is definitely going to be something they need to keep their eyes out for. How do people follow you, and how people keep an eye on where your beers are going to be popping up?
We're on all the social medias, so we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we've got our own website at manchildbrewing.com.au, and then also if you check us out on Untapped, all the new beers pop up on Untapped as well. And throw us a rate, even if they're shit, let me know, and we can change it for next time.
That's it. Well, thank you so much for having the chat, Joe. This has been great. I cannot wait to try your IPA, and we might even cut to us checking some of those later on. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, man. Cheers.